an audience you've been and what a lineup of speakers it's been for all day. A big round of applause to you for being amazing and having this energy all through the day. So I should start with a question of, is anyone not on social media here? Not really, right? Most of us are on social media. And if you are on social media, Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, whatever, and if you've ever Googled sunscreens, you will see this sliding into your inbox, which is basically somebody talking about sunscreens causing cancer or sunscreens being harmful for you, causing endocrine problems. Happen to you? You get these forwards happening. Happens to me. People send them to me all the time, which is fair because sunscreens as a concept was supposed to come in to you to protect against sun-induced skin cancer. Instead, if it were to cause any trouble for us, it wouldn't be very comfortable, it'd be discomforting, right? Let me go back and give you a little bit of context. I'm a dermatologist, it's going to be 20 plus years in dermatology as of this year. And I also work specially with laser technologies, especially pigment lasers, to kind of adapt that technology, which is originally built for Caucasians, for Westerners, to work for our skin type as a key opinion leader for pigment lasers. I also work a little bit with sunscreens in terms of their cosmetic chemistry, in biophysics, in terms of how they get absorbed into our body and what they can cause in the long run. And I also am a formulator. And recently, my book on sunscreens for skin of color came out, published by Springer Nature, which at this point is possibly the only book meant for sunscreens for skin of color. Till now, we have not been represented in the skincare sun protection domain as yet. And as of now, it's the only sunscreen book from an Indian perspective. That background, I've never really prescribed or recommended sunscreens to my clientele or patients or clients for the purpose of protecting them against skin cancer. I've prescribed sunscreens. I do recommend sunscreens on a regular basis, but I don't really prescribe it to them for the intention of preventing skin cancer. Why is that so? Let me explain to you with a little example. A couple of weeks ago, I was getting my daughter to school, and we were on the breakfast menu. It was dosa and a lady's finger, what we call as okra now, lady's finger gravy. Now she didn't like it. She doesn't like it, and she protests. And like a good mom, I told her what my mom said, or for that matter, any mom who made kids in the 70s, 80s said, which is basically have okra, have lady's finger. It's very good for you for math. You will be able to do math very well. The same thing I parroted to her, and she thought for a second and shot back saying, I don't have math class today, so maybe not okra today. Yeah? That doesn't still answer the question of why I prescribe sunscreens for skin of color, right? In terms of protecting us against skin cancer. Now, I'd like for you to take a look at this graph. And if you look at if you look at India over there in the map, we have among the least occurrence of skin cancer in the world. Two types of skin cancer mostly, melanoma skin cancer and non-melanoma skin cancer. This is the melanoma skin cancer incidence, and you see that we are among the countries which have the least occurrence of cancer. The same thing for non-melanoma skin cancer also among men and women. You see that India is the palest color, much in contrast to most of the countries in the West, especially where there is a Caucasian population. Now, I don't prescribe sunscreens for the intention of preventing skin cancer because we do not have a skin cancer problem in India. No maths class, no okra, right? Now, this brings us to meet somebody, our roots, what we call as the genome. How did we get away with this genetic jackpot of not having as much skin cancer? Yes, there are small pockets of skin cancer in India, in the northeast, where they have an exposure to arsenic. Also, in some areas in the north, in Kashmir, where they use heated utensils for warming themselves, the Kangri cancer. But by and large, we are, like I showed you in the map, we are the populations with the least risk. How did we get there? We inherited a fantastic genetic blueprint, which helped us make one of the best molecules out there, a molecule which has caused a lot of discrimination across timelines, which has led to many wars, and which is something that is still being fought in some parts of the world, melanin. Now, we were hairy apes about 1 to 2 million years ago. And then to make our hunting efficiency better in the African savanna, our body came up with an evolutionary change of switching from hair to protect us from the sun to this sophisticated, super powerful, full spectrum protection molecule called melanin. This made us hunt more effectively, grow more in population, and then we migrated out of Africa into wherever we are right now. And in the process, people who went far away from the equator lost more melanin to be more efficient for certain metabolic activities, typically vitamin D production and folate metabolism. Now, if you look at the graph on the left, the comma-shaped graph, for the longest period of time, skin of color wasn't represented in the whole photopigmentation domain, which means whatever happens to our skin because of sun exposure, light exposure, we weren't represented. In fact, the current SPF testing that we have does not include our skin types. It always used to be the group that would turn red on sun exposure, and not turning red while using a sunscreen was how we measured SPF efficiency. Now, because so many of us, eventually the whole world will become skin of color, where we have mixed ethnicities, where Caucasian and non-Caucasian, it's going to get much, much more muddied up. All of us are going to have different racial blueprints working in us. Therefore, the newer system, which is basically here, where they simply measure how much pigment we have in our skin, what we call as a colorimetric measurement, the individual typology angle, this is what is going to be used now. Why is this significant? That most of us, this is the study done on people from the 4 metro cities, where you have most of us in the tanned and brown. But most of the data that we have with skin protection science is typically above 28. So now we are getting more and more representation. Now, with great power comes great, exactly. So with great sun protection comes great chance of pigmentation. Now this very melanin, which is a super molecule which is protecting us against skin cancer, also puts us at a very high risk of pigmentation. In fact, people who are less than 35 years of age, both men and women, will develop pigmentation post-pimples almost up to 70%. Every third woman in the age group, in the perimenopausal age group, 40 to 65 years old, includes people like me, we have a risk of having melasma. And for us, when we get a tan, it is there for a very, very long period of time. In fact, we have a condition called long-lasting pigmentation, which simply means this pigmentation lasts long. Now for us, melanin is the response to everything. You scrape yourself against the wall, you heal with pigmentation. If your mosquito bites you, heal with pigmentation. If you decide to scratch the mosquito bite, you deal with more pigmentation. So for us, this is typically our injury response. And this is our roots. A lot of survival advantage in terms of being able to fend off skin cancer, and a reasonable sized problem when it comes to pigmentation. Now, is genetics everything? Is our genetic blueprint everything? Thus, do we have to deal with only this because we come with a certain genetic blueprint? Now, we have hyperpigmentation, much more than the Westerners, primarily because our skin thickness is way more, and therefore we are protected against wrinkling, but we also age. Even if we didn't have a condition, we would also age with hyperpigmentation because that's typically our thing to do for skin of color. So any other determinant of our fate, or do we basically resign ourselves to the root, enjoy the good parts, and maybe just put up with the bad parts? Is that the only determinant? I'd like to introduce you to this experiment which they did with twins. So basically, you see they are identical twins, but researchers gave them the twin on the right 11 years compared to her twin, simply because of 2 factors that she was exposed to. One is sun exposure, and the second one is smoking. So now we were talking about genetics deciding everything or most of the things we do, but here are 2 factors which are non-genetic that come into play. Time to meet our wings, the exposome. So the exposome is basically an epidemiological concept. It's roughly about 20 years old, so it's a very, very new, exciting thing in all of science, especially medical science, that we have identified certain exposures which are counted all the way from we make our entry into our mother's womb right up to the point of our death. All of these exposures coming together to contribute to health or disease. It can be anything. It can be something as trivial as aging, as what you see here, or something as impactful or as a hair dye induced whole body pigmentation. So exposome, if you look at it, has three components. One is the general external exposome. For example, with me in Chennai and you in Bangalore, you have more pollution. I have slightly lesser pollution. You have more cooler climates because temperature can be a negative factor for pigmentation. I have 4 seasons, hot, hotter, hottest, and terribly hot. And we also have some level of changes because we are so close to the equator. So then I'm at 10 degrees, you're slightly above, a little north. So then with all of these, we have common exposome factors, the general exposome, which differentiates things. Now coming to specific external exposome. Still external, like smoking, but then can cause damage. Still external, like nutrition, like our cultural sensibilities. Some of us are vegetarians, non-vegetarians. All of that also makes a difference to how we age, what cancers we may be likely to be, we may be at risk of, how long we live, and how good our cognitive health is. All of these are still dictated by this specific external exposomes. Then comes the internal exposome. Sometimes you wonder in life when you're going through a rough patch, right? Like sometimes you feel like, I'm so lonely, I'm so all alone in this by myself. Never think that way. You are never alone. There are millions and millions of microbes inside your gut and on your skin. You are always surrounded by a whole lot of living organisms. Now, these guys together form the internal exposome. So maybe when you get a gut virus, some of us recover fast, some of us recover later, some of us tolerate certain foods, some of us don't. So all of these together, the general external exposome, the internal exposome, and the specific external exposome together decides that here are my genes, here is what I'm cooking it with in terms of exposome, and here is the outcome. So if we decide to create wings out of our exposome, we need to identify what works great for a genome, which means we need to know this guy also and know them well, but we also need to be very mindful of what we are being exposed to on a daily basis. I typically say that there are 4 aspects to great skin or looking younger for longer or healthy longevity. Starts first with sleep, then with good nutrition, physical activity, and then your skincare routine. Yeah. So let me introduce you to the skin aging. To answer my initial question of if I'm not protecting my folks from skin cancer, then what am I prescribing sunscreens for? It's because the sun radiation is the #1 cause of facial pigmentation or facial aging, almost contributing 70 to 80%. Now, when we think of pigmentation, some of it can be trivial pigmentation like acne and post-pimple pigmentation, but sometimes it can be severely impactful on people's confidence and quality of life. Typically, when somebody has developed a whole body pigmentation from just using perfume sprays or hair dye, which is a condition that we are seeing very, very commonly of late. So because we are prone to pigmentation in our genetics, and because sun exposure remains the #1 cause of skin pigmentation and skin aging, sunscreens are a necessity. Now, this is an exposome within an exposome, right? So you basically have the sun as your exposome and you're trying to use the protection tool of sunscreens. Now, what do we do to protect ourselves from sunscreens, considering all the forwards all of us have been getting? Well, sunscreens have evolved a long way. The earlier sunscreens used to protect only in terms of skin cancer and only partially so. Later on, sunscreens have evolved to protect us against the entire solar spectrum. Plus, earlier sunscreens, the biggest problem used to be, they used to be very tiny and they used to be easily absorbed. Newer developments, innovations have made sunscreen molecules to be so much more bigger and difficult to get absorbed, which also means that the sunscreen stays on your skin for longer so that you don't have to reapply that frequently. There's a whole lot of innovation, all of it drawn from our genome, the knowledge from our genetic blueprint and from our exposome, depending on how. Exposome can answer beautiful questions like how long does the sunscreen stay on your skin, or in who are at specific risk of having absorption issues. So these are the questions that we're all excited to answer, because earlier it used to be a very one-way thing, right? You go to the doctor gives you something, you follow it if you can, and then you may drop off or you may continue depending on when your problem is solved. Newer ways are when we look at a collaborative activity where there is some part to be fixed at the level of the doctor, but there is a lot to be learned and implemented on your own. This directly flows into how we conduct a clinical consultation these days, because almost 90% of the success of somebody, especially in terms of outcomes like hair growth, skin pigmentation, longevity, and even in non-dermatological conditions like diabetes, are all based on participation from the individual. One important thing that you see was that the earlier models, sleep wasn't a big deal. Now, sleep is considered to be the superpower that can give you healthy longevity, and it also makes sense to sleep in relation to your circadian rhythm. I have this thought that, if Mother Nature really wanted us to stay up in the night, she would have left the sun on. So most of it has to be that your circadian rhythm starts with the sunrise and the sunset, because typically our hormones, the stress hormone called the cortisol and the repair hormone called the melatonin, follow this cycle. So exposome science is a lot about understanding these small things. It will not be a lot on a day-to-day basis. Some of us have these habits. We work out, we eat healthy. They take time to build, but once you build them up, these habits contribute by compounding over a period of time by promising you long-term health. Let's see how it translates into somebody who, let's say, comes to us for hair loss. Meet Arun. Arun is around 22 years old, and he is in his final year economics and is aspiring to get into a B school, a prestigious B school. Arun's father is an entrepreneur. You see him down there, and Arun wants to follow in his footsteps, and therefore he's been studying, preparing, working a lot, which leaves him with very poor sleep cycles, and he's always on the rush because there is so much to do. There's a lot of input that comes in from social media, so many notifications per day, FOMO, and Arun is forever on the run. And then, because there's so much pressure going on in Arun's life, whenever he gets the opportunity to, he has comfort eating as a way of stress release. Now, hair loss is something that we are seeing way more commonly. Maybe about 15, 20 years ago, when there was early days of practice, I used to see 2 out of 10 men with hair loss. Now I only see 2 men with hair. The exposome, our lifestyle, our not being able to take time off to relax, rebound, and come back, all of that has compounded things to the point that hair loss is almost accepted, well, if not guaranteed for the next generation. Is it possible to completely reverse this level of exposome exposure? Potentially. But here, genetics plays a very dominant role because hair loss is strongly passed on by genes. But together with the exposome, we may be precipitating it much earlier. Now, this is not so much a critical life condition, but it adds or takes away so much confidence to people. Agree? Now, this same phenomenon, if we are going to be able to translate exposome science into cancer research, into infertility research, into cognitive decline research, now that is what exposome science is all about. That is where these wings can take us. I do hope that, considering that this specialty at this point is running multiple cohorts in many countries, from egg, sperm stage all the way to end of life stages, and with sensors coming in, Internet of Things coming in, and generative AI being used in exposome science, at least some of you would be interested to pursue this a little bit more to see what you can build for everybody.